Today's video is gonna be a little different from my usual because today you might actually learn something. And that, my friend, is a rare treat coming from me. The Edge is about a billionaire who tirelessly attempts to burn down the forest while Alec Baldwin contemplates having another 9 children, and Harold Perrineau realizing that this is a survival movie and the odds are not in his favor because this is Redeye Reviews. So, fun fact, I love camping. But not just any camping, because my dad actually taught survival training in the Air Force for a really long time. From Alaska to the Amazon rainforest, like, the man's done it all. So camping growing up was less about luxury and fun, and more about learning how to survive if the worst were to happen. By request, I was asked to watch The Edge, and I thought this is the perfect movie to show you how not to survive in Alaska. We start with billionaire Charles Morse and his friends going out to a remote lodge in the Alaska wilderness.
Okay, right this way, folks. No disrespect, I'm surprised you know what a bench rest is.
We also see somebody forgot to cancel their subscription to National Geographic. Yeah, no, Grandma. I do not want 250 magazines today, but thank you. The man who runs this place tells us that there is a big problem with bears around these parts, and then later that night, we learn why. Yeah, the man leaves hunks of fresh meat just a-blowing in the wind. Sir, you would attract me with that smell. You would attract a lot of things with that smell. But they prank the old man. That leads us to our first rule of survival. Do not prank billionaires if you want to live. That is how you end up in a homemade submarine controlled by an Xbox controller, okay? Just don't do it. But he does get a couple of cool birthday gifts.
Thank you, that's beautiful.
There's an engraving inside.
There is an old superstition that says if somebody gives you a knife, you have to give them a coin. And he is an old man, so of course his pockets are filled with loose change.
Ah, yes, thank you. Yeah, give him a coin?
Billionaire or not, the bro's got change in those pockets. The next day, Baldwin decides he wants to take photos of this native guy who hunts bears, so they pack up a plane and they head out. They go to his cabin, and while there, they learn that the guy isn't there. He went and left to go bear hunting.
Our model's gone bear hunting.
So they pack back in, and they follow his note. And while flying, they run into a bunch of geese, and it is chaos. I bet one of those birds really wished he sold them some insurance right about now. Affleck. And here's where the bird shit hits the fan. Because the pilot dies, they crash into freezing water. They do get some of the supplies in the plane. However, as soon as they fail to light a fire with a match, they waste a flare.
Need them.
Which I think we can all agree, you don't need to know much about survival to know that you shouldn't do that. Thank goodness you guys still have some matches left to signal for help later.
Why would they come for us?
When they go to the cabin, they'll see the note.
We also see that Alec took the frickin' letter from the cabin. And that is Backpacking 101. It's so easy, folks. Always tell people where you are going and when to expect you back. If your plans change, tell people your plans have changed. That way you don't have to walk across Alaska. So they decide to travel south. And instead of using that giant ball of fire in the sky to determine direction, they magnetize a paperclip, which, fun fact, would actually work. But remember, it's going to point to magnetic north, not true north. And being all the way up in Alaska, this thing is probably looking more northeast than anything else, so the mountain is like more southwest. But whatever, we're working with what we got.
That peak is south.
And while walking, they hear a rather scary noise.
Those all tells me. Shall we?
Firstly, it goes without saying, but this is Bart the bear. He's the only bear with an IMDb page, and I was obsessed with him years ago, and I love this gentle giant. But in this movie, he's playing kind of an asshole. And rather than raise their arms and make a lot of noise, they immediately make themselves bait, and they turn, and they run, which is something they do the entire movie. They also somehow outrun a Kodiak bear, which is impossible. I know they're huge. I know they look kind of clumsy, but these guys can run up to 40 miles per hour, and I'm not lying. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Olympics before, but no, humans cannot run that fast. So they reach a waterfall. They decide they absolutely need to cross this waterfall in the most dangerous location possible. Bart pulls a real boner move and messes with Sir Anthony Hopkins quite a good bit.
Keep coming!
And once again, Bart, being a real survivor, he would head upstream to a wider section of river, because for the most part, wider sections tend to be shallower. Our bear would then face upstream and sidestep across the river slowly. The more you know.
Why do we even think they'll come looking for us?
Our friend's a billionaire. You know what happens when you misplace one?
Before we get too much further, I do want to point something out. If you do find yourself lost in the woods, and you do find a river, just follow the river downstream. That's it. People normally need water to survive, and that is water. Follow it. Yeah, follow it, and you're almost certainly going to find civilization. But no, they don't follow it. They follow a paperclip across the mountain instead.
Come on, let's go. Nobody knows where we are. We got nothing to eat.
So we ask our man to make a spear, and he somehow confuses his own leg for a spear, and he gouges the ever-loving crap out of himself.
Ah!
Take hands away.
What have I done?
Keep him there. All right.
Again, not hard to not cut on top of your own body, but please don't do this. They then leave our man alone with an open wound, and they just have bloody rags everywhere, and yes, bears are kind of like sharks. They can smell blood. They're like better than bloodhounds, legitimately. Don't do this. However, it's like a double thing, because animals usually don't like fire, because, you know, fire is like the only reason humans manage to evolve and not be eaten. But not Bart. No, our man runs right in there and messes this fool up. And while we're on the subject, let's talk fire. Alaska is one of the hardest places to make fire, especially in the winter, because the news story, everything is wet all the time. So the fact not only are they easily finding dry wood to burn, but that they keep making new fires is ridiculous. There's a pretty cool and pretty easy thing to make called a fire bundle, or an ember bundle. It's basically twigs, dry leaves, some small tinder. You put an ember from your fire in the middle, wrap that baby in bark and moss, kind of like a nature cigar, and that's it. It's going to give you enough oxygen and fuel to keep the ember alive for a pretty long time. Then, when you set up your next camp, you just unroll that sucker, and you got an ember for your next fire. Or don't. I don't know. If you have an unlimited amount of flares, you could just keep using those things like these idiots do. They also attempt to catch a squirrel with like the most intricately designed cage I've ever seen. And that is just god-awful. Okay, write this down. Easiest way to catch small game is with a thing called a figure 4 deadfall trap. That's it. It's literally a rock and some sticks. Guy goes under, rock crushes guy, you get to eat guy. It's easy. But the key to catching game is to set up as many traps as you can, and you just kind of got to play the odds. So if you make one cage and you sit there like an idiot hoping for one squirrel to show up, you're gonna starve to death. Instead, set up a dozen or more of these deadfall traps and you just hope that like 2 or maybe 3 of them catch an animal. Bada bing, bada boom, you got a squirrel. But most likely a rat or a mouse, because there's a lot of those things. But while hunting, they hear a helicopter. They decide to chase it, which I feel like I'm complaining so much, but don't run in a survival situation. You're probably going to hurt yourself. And most likely it's not going to see you. So now you're injured and lost. No, if I was Charles, I would use my fancy new little pocket watch as a mirror and try to signal the helicopter by flashing the sun into the pilot's eyes, and you hope he crashes. No, you hope he sees you. But they don't. He does try to fish the next day, which might be the first smart thing they have attempted in the whole movie. We're just going to ignore the fact that he doesn't have any bait. They've decided they're tired of running and they're going to try and kill the bear. So they make a lot of fire. They try their hardest to start a forest fire, if you would. Can't be a bear in the forest if there's no forest. So now they both think back to Star Wars. They look at Sir Anthony Hopkins. They're like, you already kind of look like old Ben Kenobi. So they decide to lure the bear in with some blood. And then they spring a giant Ewok trap on him. And as soon as that fails, they fall apart. They throw themselves off a cliff. They soak themselves in freezing river water again.
Get him in the neck!
They get all cut up, but they do manage to kill the bear. They also manage to skin and tan the bear, which I'm not going to humor that at all. I'll be honest, I had to look this up because I wasn't sure. You can technically tan a hide in the wild, but you need to literally rub the animal's brains over the hide. It's called braining. I guess brains have a lot of fat and lecithin. I'm probably butchering that word. But they have some stuff in it that makes it a good tanning solution. However, it takes like 5 days. So no, they did not do this. They also eat just a little bit of meat. You know, they make a couple of cool necklaces, and then they just leave. Now, I've personally never eaten bear, but I have eaten wild game, and basically the meat's going to taste like whatever the animal's diet is. So if he eats a bunch of berries, it probably tastes pretty good. However, Bart the bear apparently solely eats people, so it probably tastes like total dog shit. They also leave the rest of the meat, and that is crazy, because it's not that hard to turn this meat into jerky. So in a lot of climates, you can cut it really thin, and you smoke the meat. However, Alaska is super wet, and this would take a really long time. So what you do there is you cut it really, really thin, and then you hang it out in the sun. But the most important part is that you gotta squeeze and wipe all the water and moisture out of it, otherwise it just rots and it goes bad. After like 8 to 12 hours, you're gonna have some pretty good bear jerky, and it'll probably keep for a little bit. A tragic and true story, that's actually the main reason this guy named Chris McCandless died in Alaska. There's a book about him called Into the Wild. But basically, he was starving to death, and he somehow managed to kill a moose with a .22 caliber rifle, which alone is insane. I don't know how he did that. But then our man had no clue how to cure the meat, and all of it spoiled. And that's tragic as hell, because if he knew how to cure it in the sun, he probably would still be alive. But back to our men. They have once again abandoned their fire, and I haven't seen them drink water one time. However, they're now in great spirits with their new, rotting bearskins draped all over them. They come across an old cabin. Inside, they find some supplies, some guns. We also see that on the same receipt for his pocket watch, his wife bought Alec a watch with the engraving, "I love cheating on my husband with you." Okay, it doesn't actually say that, but it might as well.
Hell of an adventure, eh, Charles?
So, being found out, Alec decides to take old Bessie out back and end his days.
Come on, Charles. Done is done.
Stealing his wife and maybe taking his money in the process. However, our man does not look where he is stepping, and he falls into a deadfall.
Charles, don't! Ah! Oh, God, Charles, oh, God.
Be careful of the deadfall.
We then proceed to remove the spear and put a tourniquet on his leg, and one of those things is a horrible idea. That spear is keeping the wound sealed, and it's keeping all the inside stuff from becoming outside stuff. Just don't remove things that are impaling a person. Just don't do it. Let them do it at a hospital. Are you a hospital? I don't think so. So, we take a canoe. We head back to the river that we never should have left in the first place, and we head south.
I'm dying and I never did a goddamn thing. Never too late for a kind gesture, eh, Charles?
He finally sees a helicopter, but as it arrives, we see Alec. He's dead. He died in a very unflattering position that's pretty sad, I guess. And I'm just saying, if you put that tourniquet on his leg and then left the stupid spear in his body, he might still be alive. But he heads home. Everybody sees he belongs to the mountain now. He's got a necklace and a torn up shirt. He gives his wife that affair watch, and he's like, "Hey, that was a pretty stupid thing to engrave. Have fun being poor." And that, my friends, is the movie. So, to recap, if you actually crash in an Alaskan lake, get dry, make a fire, bring your fire with you in an ember bundle, stick to the river, and set many, many traps. Not just one Crash Bandicoot-looking cage. Oh, and lastly, always tell people where you're going, and if the plans change, tell them that too. Okay, now let's head on over to Redeye Reacts.
You can go downstairs and get me a sandwich.
Yeah, okay, of course.
Okay. I may be a billionaire, but I know how to make a sandwich. Take some bread, giant hunk of cheese, a whole tomato. That seems right.
There's the spirit that beat the Japanese.
Never feel sorry for a man who owns a plane.
I tell you what, I like your style.
So, how are you planning to kill me?
Oh, I could think of one way. It could, but I don't want to say, so I'm just going to let you all think it, okay? And then collectively, we're just going to move on as a group.
No, I'm not dense. I just have no imagination.
He's a man killer.
He's a man killer? Well, no shit, Sherlock. What gave it away? Was it maybe that man he killed earlier? Anybody else find it funny that they're breathing in unison?
Nah, you wouldn't have done it.
Yes, I would have. You stupid son of a bitch.
How did they die, sir?
They died, saving my life.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were the ones starting fires with flares and stabbing themselves in the leg 10 seconds after being handed a knife. But yeah, sure, they helped. That's it. I told you it's different today, so thank you. Hopefully you learned something and old Redeye saves your life one day, and then you're like, "Redeye, thanks for saving my life that one time." I don't know, something like that. As always, Thank you to the patrons for your support. Was this fun? Is this cool? Do we like that? I don't know. Let me know. And if you didn't, you could always join the Patreon and be like, hey, I didn't like that. You should review Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I'd be like, cool, bro, here's your video. So if you do want to join, there's a link in the description. I also have a Discord channel that's in the description, and I have a merch store. It doesn't have any survival gear, but it's got a couple of funky shirts, and that's down below as well. I will see you next time, and until then, stay happy and stay healthy. Do not prank billionaires if you want to live. That is how you end up in a homemade submarine controlled by an Xbox controller, okay? Just don't do it.